My name is April Jenkinson. I'm from Bend, Oregon. At this time, I have 7 units. One of them is a fourplex. And I'm in the middle of a situation right now where I have a tenant that I need to evict because his children are choosing the wrong guest. We have had 2 people arrested out in front of the building, 1 for armed robbery. I can't have this for the rest of my tenants in the building. I have children in the building. And I have people that are willing to bring guns and aren't afraid to hold somebody up for $50, matter of fact. And so that, you know, what am I going to do if I have to give a cause notice to this? It's going to cause all kinds of retaliation, not only for me, but for the other tenants. And every time you give a tenant a reason, then it's the backlash. They don't pay their rent. So now I'm out 90 days of rent. I am out $6,000 for destruction to my unit. And the financial effect on me and my family is just outrageous. You know, I keep my rents low. I try to work with my tenants, but it doesn't always pay. And this is going to affect us. I have a daughter in college who has called me up and says, "Mom, with this new house bill, does this mean I'm going to have to come home because you're not going to be able to afford to send me to college?" And she's right, because I can't sell my building now to pay for the rest of her college, because I'm going to have to pay fees to get the tenants out before I can get rid of the buildings. So why don't we just start making people responsible for their own lives? Yes, make them become productive, make them get out and start working hard. We worked hard 24/7 to get this stuff. I didn't do it overnight on my own. It takes a lot of hard work, and to be a landlord or be a tenant, and that's just the way life is.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, committee members, Representative Stark, Speaker Kotek. I'm Mark Nichols. I'm from the Medford area. I've never given a no-cause notice. Once I should have, but I didn't, and the time worked out about the same as if when I just talked them out of it versus if I'd gone through the courts and paid all the fees. So no-cause notices aren't really the answer, and taking them away isn't the answer. I still want to reserve having no-cause notices in case I come to that point that I actually need a no-cause notice. But I've been able to talk the residents out as I needed to. I want to address some of the issues that people have brought up for habitability concerns when they've complained. We already have a remedy for habitability issues when they've complained to their landlord. That can be remedied through laws already in existence. So how did we get here? There was a Glass-Steagall Act in the 1933. Reagan did some deregulation, which kind of started the ball rolling, and then Clinton came in and gutted the Glass-Steagall Act and created the banks the opportunity to invest where they shouldn't have been investing. That created the housing bubble and then the bust, and then nobody could get loans to build, and that's the real problem. Is for 8 years we didn't have building going on. So let's not try and fix it by putting a bunch of restrictions on landlords. Make building possible. That's where we need to fix this, not limiting the landlords. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we now have from over 100 miles away.
Good afternoon. My name is Sybil Beck. I'm not only a landlord, I'm also the president of the Salem Rental Housing Association. My husband and I own 20 mostly 2-bedroom houses and duplexes in the Salem area. We've been renting them out for over 20 years. We went through some tough times when it took several months to find a tenant, which also meant no income, but we still had to pay property taxes, mortgage payments, and all the other expenses. We take care of our properties because several of our tenants are also our neighbors. In the news, we are portrayed as money-grabbing monsters, racists, just to name a few. House Bill 2004, with its crippling restrictions, relocation fee, and the end of no-cost notices, doesn't allow us to take any chances like we did with 20-year-old Josh, who suddenly ends up with his 4 children because their mother is doing drugs, and he's awarded custody. It's September, and with no rental history, he ends up in a family shelter. We agreed to sign a 6-month lease, reduce the rent, so he can give his children the first Christmas together. It turned out, it turned out to be a great tenant, so we renewed the lease. But if he had been a bad tenant, I would have had to pay him a relocation fee after lowering his rent. If House Bill 2004 passes, we won't be able to take any more risks, and we will sell all of our single-family rentals. I'm certain there won't be rentals anymore, but owner-occupied houses. And who loses here? We have been made the scapegoat for the housing supply that can't keep up with the influx of people. It's up to the state, counties, and cities to enable the construction of more housing that will bring down the rents. Thank you for listening.
Hello, committee members. My name is Janelle Page, and I oppose House Bill 2004. I have been a renter, a homeowner, and now I am also a small landlord with 6 rental units in the Salem-Keizer area. This is how I pay my bills. I'm looking to grow my rental business and hire employees, but this bill makes me less likely to do that. House Bill 2004 will create an increase in the number of for-cause notices. This will make it very hard for those tenants to rent a new home. Will also cause some tenants to lose their housing benefits. Will cause tighter screening of tenants and higher deposits. Will cause many landlords to sell their rentals and get out of the industry, causing even lower supply and driving rents up. It will be a significant financial burden on small landlords like myself with 10 units or less. The focus should be on fixing the real problem, the low supply. We need more rental units to solve the current problems. Rent control is a disincentive to invest in more rentals. More regulations and expenses for landlords will do the exact opposite of what this bill is trying to solve and make problems for tenants worse. Since 2009, I have used a new no-cause notice of termination once. I purchased a distressed duplex. One side was vacant. I worked out a rent increase the current tenant could afford. Her new rent was still much less than the vacant side rented for. I felt good that she was able to stay and rent. However, she became increasingly difficult to work with. She had a hard time getting along with me and the other tenants. It was nearly impossible to schedule the needed maintenance to her rental unit. Her mom called to help mediate, and she said she knew her daughter was a very difficult person to get along with. Due to personality conflicts, I no longer wanted to do business with her. I also did not want the other tenants to leave. I therefore gave her a no-cause notice of termination, which prevented my creating a black mark on her record. She was able to find another rental. House Bill. Thank you.
Representative Geyer and committee members. My name is Scott Letman. I am a real estate appraiser, developer, and residential property owner in Albany, Oregon since 1979. I have 48 full-time employees, and I graduated in economics. So for change this evening, my comments address the economics of housing scarcity. How do we know there's housing scarcity? Prices have risen and availability has declined for owner-occupied and rental housing. In economics, rising prices are a market signal for market participants to increase supply. The increase in rental prices has resulted in legislative bills to cap and stabilize rents. The lack of availability of housing at favorable rents has resulted in bills to eliminate no-cause evictions. When a tenant is issued a no-cause eviction, it is a problem when there is nothing available at a favorable rent. This morning's hearing offered many examples how the current housing market has affected the at-risk members of our community, and I rent to quite a few. However, this crisis was smart growth planned and predicted. We are living on islands we call cities and are surrounded by an ocean that we call farmland. You cannot build in the ocean. We protect this farmland, which has a value in farm use, at $7,500 an acre, when the same land within the city is valued at $325,000 an acre. Recent sales I saw outside of Hillsborough. The lack of affordable housing is not smart. If the proponents of these bills use their energy and resources to change smart growth policies, market forces would respond with more housing as they do in other cities in the nation. And I have other explanations on how you can do that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Start.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Philip Gebhardt. I'm a small landlord. I invest with two of my sisters who are out of state. I convinced my sisters to invest in Oregon, partially because Oregon has historically had a very balanced landlord-tenant law. I felt that it was very equal on each side. Some of the other states, California, as an example, where one of my sisters live, it's very, very pro-tenant, and it becomes very difficult to become a small landlord. We currently have 39 units that we take care of. And we see the House Bill 2004 as being potentially very damaging to us. The no-cause eviction is used, and I have used it a few times. I will let you know I could have done the for-cause eviction, and I chose not to for the tenant's sake. One of them was a young lady who had some mental instability and got in a fight with her neighbor. That should have resulted in a 24-hour notice. I chose not to do that because I knew she'd never find another rental if I did that. The other thing that I want you to recognize is that the no-cause eviction allows us to have some flexibility. What I mean by flexibility, I have tenants who don't get paid on a regular basis. They don't get paid on the 1st always. My contract says rent is due on the 1st, it's late on the 5th after 6 p.m. If one of my tenants comes to me and they say, my pay date's falling on the 6th, can you wait an extra day? I work with them. I couldn't do that if I didn't have that no-cause eviction, because I'd lose that as an evictable means.
Thank you. Okay.
Good evening, Chair Kenny Geyer, committee. My name is Matt Witter. Olsen. Thanks for letting me testify tonight. I'm Malcolm McIver with Commerce Properties. We're a rental property owner in Portland, and I've been in the business for about 60 years now. I'm not 60, but we've been in the business for longer than I've been around. I've heard the folks in support of HB 2004 make some really good points tonight. You should not have to live in housing that has mold in the cabinets. You should not have to live in housing where you're afraid that if you complain about that, you're going to get evicted. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have housing that is unstable and having rent increases in double digits year to year. None of that should be happening. The irony of this for me is that House Bill 2004 will make all those problems worse. We're going to have a deteriorating housing stock as landlords cannot have the funds available to keep their units up. And we're going to have less of it if it's harder to be a landlord and you can't increase your rents over what the government tells you can. I think that the young man from Jackson County is right. He said it's time for action right now. The action I would propose is, one, expand the UGBs. One of the fellows talked about the cost of land for growing grass seed versus for housing. It's a crime to have land reserved for growing grass seed when we don't have enough housing for people who are low income. Reduce charges on development. Those have been used by various municipalities as a supplement for taxes, completely divorced the cost of development. I think that's a crime too, when you've heard the stories we've heard tonight. And I would ban taxes on new construction. So I hope you vote against 2004. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name's Ken Knowles. Thank you for listening to me. It's not easy being a small landlord. It's no get-rich-quick scheme. Many people are trying to prepare for retirement by becoming a landlord, but the state's trying to make this harder for the small investor. This is no PERS. I can understand there's a problem with no-cause evictions, but on the whole, these occur very often. These are not very frequent. I recommend limiting a no-cause eviction to 1 eviction per property or per 10 units per year. So that allows, in most cases I've heard tonight, that would cover that. If a landlord requires the no-cause eviction, I recommend that the money obtained from the penalty be paid into a fund, which is then distributed to people in hardship cases. No retaliatory evictions, no-cause eviction should be happening, and that's a legislative change. I don't believe that should be included in this House bill. One thing to note, there's IRS tax penalties for landlords that charge below 80% of the market rate. So if there starts becoming that discrepancy, landlords are going to suffer even more. So this bill helps to the do not repeal ORS 91225. This bill protects existing tenants and keeps existing tenants at a reasonable rate. But what it will do, or what it's likely to do, is increase rents for young people that have already got hundreds of thousands of dollars student loans, and now subject to subsidising the people in what effectively becomes subsidised rent. One of the problems in Portland metro area is transportation. I live 18 miles from Portland. It takes me 90 minutes to commute each way. If we increase, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Dan Hayes, and I make my living owning rental properties and managing rental properties for others. I'm not wealthy, and in fact, my 3 children are negatively impacted by the rapid rise in rents in our city. So much so that my son and his new wife had to move back into our home because they just flat out couldn't afford it. I'm asking you to vote no on House Bill 2004 because rent control flat out does not work. It only serves to exacerbate the problem, and I know my children, if House Bill 2004 passes as written, will have an even harder time finding affordable housing. Economists don't agree on much, but on this point they do agree. Rent control does not work. Research proves this out. I sent an article, a research article to each of you about 70 years of research in San Francisco, and there were 3 things that made a positive impact on rent: job growth, wage growth, and housing availability. When those 3 things were in place, San Francisco rents stabilized. We would ask that you spend our time, money, and resources against those elements to help stabilize the rental market. Finally, it may seem effective enough to just simply eliminate a landlord's right to take possession of the asset they own, but you haven't been there when a drug dealer, and the cops couldn't prove that drug dealing was happening in the house. How are we expected to be able to approve that? Just today, as a matter of fact, a neighbor of one of the units we manage came up to the owner and said, "Do you own this home?" And when he said yes, she hugged him and thanked him profusely because we served 2 no-cause notices to vacate for 2 units. One was dealing drugs and the other was just a revolving door of residents. And she thanked him for helping make the neighborhood better. There are definitely recourse that tenants have if a landlord does not fix the home, just like landlords have recourse if tenants don't honor the lease agreement. We'd ask you to please focus your efforts there rather than limiting rent.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Maria Sworsky. I'm a Portland area rental property owner. I acknowledge that there's a housing crisis, and I really sympathize with the residents of those apartment complexes in Portland, or any residents being forced out of their homes by ridiculous rent increases. We mom and pop rental property owners did not cause the current shortage of rental housing, and yet we are being forced to shoulder the burden. Relocation fees add to the cost of doing business. When costs go up, the cost of our service does too. Now that the measure has passed in Portland, I will be raising rents when I wasn't otherwise going to, in order to cover the additional expenses and risks of continuing to provide housing. And I don't feel very good about this. One of the risks is not being able to smoothly terminate a tenancy if that tenant is causing a problem for the other residents or neighbors. No-cause notices have been an important tool when the other tenants and neighbors are not able to comfortably enjoy their home. They cannot live with disturbances, carry on their employment effectively, and peacefully enjoy their home. Most tenants won't risk missing a day of work to go to court. They also aren't comfortable having their problem neighbor know who reported them. I've used no-cause termination notices several times with success when I knew there were multiple problems with the tenant and yet wouldn't have been able to find success through a for-cause notice. If we mom-and-pop rental property owners have to pay relocation fees or hire lawyers or hire a property manager, the maintenance of the building will suffer. A lot of us are still catching up on the deferred maintenance from the recession. These additional costs, until they can be fully passed on to the tenants in the form of higher rent, will take away from the upkeep of the property. More restrictions placed on us housing providers make me afraid to publicly advertise my upcoming available housing units. Therefore, it's now being done only by word of mouth. How does this benefit the wider pool of tenants seeking housing? Yet it's one thing that I can do to control my risk.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Glen Farrell. First time I've ever testified. And I'd like to say that small landlord in Portland, and that I have some good long-term tenants, and I've had some other tenants who have moved in. All of a sudden, problems start happening. No one wants to. I have to have absolute proof to issue a for-cause notice termination. And without that, you know, I'm going to lose if I end up taking it to court. I don't have some witnesses, or if I don't have absolute proof. But yet I still have problems at the property. Give a no-cause termination notice. If the tenant does move out, who was the problem? All of a sudden, there's no problems anymore there. Everybody's getting along and happy again. You know, I didn't raise rents from 2008 to 13, recession. I was hit hard with it. I figured everybody else was also. I have not been raising rents extensively to the amount that I've heard some, and but I would still like to be able to have the freedom to raise the rent as necessary and to have them be effective for me.
Thank you.